So you'll notice that if you go to the itlms.mitt.ca, the website or the portal or Moodle or whatever you want to call it, that a new course has appeared. It looks like this. Introduction to React. Do you see it? Does everyone see it? Yeah, excellent. Okay, so that's where we're going to be doing the course for the next 2 weeks. It's just one course this time. Okay, we're not going to do 2 courses. As much as I liked doing those 2 courses together, I don't know if I ever want to do that again. It was a lot, those last 2 courses that we did at the same time, but I got to figure out a way to make them, run them simultaneously, but a little bit better. So we're going to do Introduction to React. So today we're going to cover the course outline, pretty straightforward, and we're going to look at class 1. So I'm going to click on the course outline, download it. Okay, so we are starting. So this course is called Introduction to React. In this course, we are going to cover introductory. We're going to do some introduction, exactly as it sounds, Introduction to React.js. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about what React.js is shortly. Okay, so we're going to be, it's very common, very popular. Okay, if you look at jobs online and you type in React, they'll come up. It's all JavaScript based. Okay, so all that knowledge that we've accumulated so far with JavaScript, HTML, CSS, we'll be leveraging all of that. Okay, so it's important that we had built up this really good understanding of JavaScript up till now. Prerequisites for this are really, I missed one course. It's both of the last 2 courses that we took. Okay, we are doing these full days. Obviously not lecturing full days. It's probably going to be a standard morning lecture. We are doing this for the next 2 weeks. I do ask for a little bit of flexibility in that time because this course can really be difficult for some people. And occasionally I might extend it. Okay, very occasionally I might extend it by 1 or 2 classes, depending on the feedback that I'm getting from you. Okay, so it is scheduled for 50 hours, which is about 5 hours a day times 10 days-ish. Okay, that includes a final project and stuff, but sometimes it can go a little bit longer than that. But any extra days that I take are going to eat into the next course, which is the presentation course. But I'm okay with that, if you're okay with that. If you're not okay with that, message me privately, please, and we'll talk. Okay. So you can take a look at the general learning outcomes, but in general, the general learning outcomes are, we're going to learn a little bit of React. We're not going to learn all of React. React can be very complex. People work exclusively in React as their job. Okay, that it's not uncommon for people to work exclusively in React as their job. And so you can imagine how in depth that goes. Okay, so we're going to just scratch the surface. We're going to create a couple React apps. We're going to break down the concepts in React. Okay, but we're going to be leaving a lot of stuff out. So that's pretty much what this is. And we're going to be creating single-page JavaScript applications. Okay, that's kind of the goal. If you have any accessibility requirements, obviously, please go speak with Kayla. Please email Kayla. Okay. Course schedule. So nothing really to see here, except for we're running this for 10 days. So really the stuff that you probably care about at this point, because all of these topics probably don't mean anything to you right now. We're running for 10 days. At the end of it, we're going on with a final project. That might also go over the weekend because 2 days is a little bit short, but we'll see. 1 assignment, 1 project. Okay, I can't fit anything more in there that I can think of that's reasonable. And the assignment's going to come at the beginning of next week. Okay, so assignment's going to come at the beginning of next week. You're going to get the assignment. We're going to keep working, and then the assignment's going to be due. We're going to have to figure out a way to do this somehow. And that's one of the challenges. I don't like giving assignments and continuing to lecture and give exercises while you're supposed to be doing the assignment, because you're going to pick one or the other, exercises or assignment. And it's probably going to be assignment, which means the exercises are not going to be done, which means you're probably not going to have the same amount of understanding of the concepts covered. So this might be where we add an extra class. I might just give you an extra class just to do the assignment, pause learning, pause lecture at that point. Okay, but we'll play by ear. Nothing else of interest in here. Bring your laptop. Coming to class without a functioning laptop may require the student to go get the laptop. So don't come to the Zoom session without your laptop. Okay. Otherwise, you'll have to go home and get your laptop. That's pretty much it. Nothing. Course outlines are more of a, John, you have to go over this with your students at the beginning of every course, so everyone knows what to expect. You have it. Here you go. It's not quite a contract because there's a big escape clause way at the bottom that says I'm allowed to change anything, but this is the map, okay, of where we're going. Any questions? All right, then let's get into the real deal. Let's talk about React. Okay, so we are going to be using the React documentation for this course. Okay, we're not going to be using any videos. We're not going to be using any. Occasionally, I might find a video that I find to be very helpful, but again, this needs to be very structured, and React is it's not new by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not old. It's still considered, I would say it's still considered fairly young. It's constantly changing. It's very modern. And because of that, a lot of the videos, a lot of the other documentation that you're going to find around the internet could be not incorrect, but not the way that I want the material presented. And not in line with the way I present the material. So you may find information out there that is different than what I'm presenting in class. And that's pretty common, right? Just like the JavaScript that we've been doing so far. We learned it a certain way, and then you go out there and you see everyone using var, right? But we learned constant let. Yeah, because that's how programming is, and or how, if we look at the Gulp documentation, it's very different than the documentation that you see in Node Package Manager with respect to Gulp packages. They're just different versions and stuff like that. So we're going to be focusing on the React documentation itself. It's very good. It's very thorough. It works at a very elementary level, but it also works at a very deep level too, if you want that. So React. What is React? React is they call it a JavaScript library, but I would also call it a JavaScript framework. Okay. So far, we haven't really used a framework. A framework I like to define as something that provides structure for us to work in. Okay. So it's a structured way of building JavaScript applications. And that is not something we've had yet, right? Our structure has been index.html, styles.css, or something like that, like a style file, right? And one app.js file that contains all of our JavaScript that's in any order that we want and is like totally, everyone's program is totally different, right? No real structure to it. A framework comes in and says, yeah, that's really great, but you know what? It's easier sometimes to work within a structure. Put this over here. Put that over there. Put this other stuff over here. They tell you where things go. Now, some of them are very structured, okay? React is not very structured. React is a very loose structure, but I think it still provides some structure. I'm still going to be showing you, this is, do this, put it here, do this, put it there. Okay. So we're going to start to develop this structure, and that's actually a benefit. Frameworks. So that's the concept of a framework. Okay. Is that it provides structure to your application and usually functionality as well. React is no different. It's going to provide us with structure and functionality, and it's all based on JavaScript. So it's all JavaScript, okay? Does anyone know who makes React and who is the—
Facebook?
Yeah, so this is a project from Facebook. Okay, React is a project that was created by Facebook and it's still developed by Facebook, and it's used in all of Facebook and like a bazillion other applications. Okay, it's extremely popular. There's a ton of jobs for React. So if we went to Indeed and we just looked at jobs in Winnipeg, we typed in React. Okay. Full stack developer, network developer. There's a lot that are going to include the term reactive. So maybe we put developer in here. Okay. Front-end developer, software developer, web developer, UI designer, full stack developer, senior mobile developer. Like the list, that's pretty big for Winnipeg for just the word React developer. So there's like 12 jobs, 15 jobs on here. And these are permanent postings, okay? These don't go away. This Tactica one, the company I used to work for, this has been on here since I was there, okay? This job ad has never gone away. This bold job ad never goes away. They are always hiring, assuming you have the skills. Okay, and that's what we're trying to develop. So there's a lot of opportunities for React. Okay, it doesn't have to be an exclusive thing. You don't have to only use React. You can use React with other things, and we're going to look at that at some point. But for right now, the way we look at and build with React, we're going to look at it and build it as though it's the only tool that you ever need. Okay, but once you go further into backend, you will have the opportunity to use React with other things. It's essentially a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. Okay, and what we've been doing pretty much up till now is exactly that. We have been doing front end. Front end means we're building interactive user interfaces. Right? That is what we've been doing. This whole bus app, it's just a user interface, okay? We have no backend data. We're just providing an interactive user interface for finding a bus, okay? And it was a complex piece of work. React aims to provide structure to stuff like that and simplification. So we will actually take some of the projects that we built in the previous courses and put them on React and see the difference, okay? They're going to be longer and bigger, but much more structured. Okay, okay. So let's get started. We are going to need for this course to use, we're going to need to use our terminal, okay? So because a lot of the stuff that we're going to be running is going to have to occur in our terminal. Let me bring up my information here. For this course. TT. 260. Let's see where we're at. Okay, So the first thing that we're going to look at is, and this is complicated. This is even me getting into this, I'm talking about this is rather complicated. Okay. This is not a necessary step to use React, but this is the step that we're going to be using, the tool that we're going to be using. React is just JavaScript. And at the end of the day, all you need is a simple line of a library to use React. However, to use React the way we want to use it, we need a lot more structure. Okay, so we need to install a bunch of stuff, a bunch of node packages. Okay, and one of these node packages that we are going to install is called, or that we're going to use. This is not something we install. This is something we use. It's called Create React App. Okay, so don't push enter yet. Let me talk a little bit about this first. So Create React App, and you can actually find this on the React documentation. If you click down here, get started, and you don't have to go here. I just want to show you. Create a new React app. Okay, installation app, create a new React app. We are going to use a tool chain. There's a big thing that says here, you might not need a tool chain. Okay, now a tool chain is kind of like Gulp, right? What Gulp was, we put stuff in, we run things, and it generates stuff. That's kind of like a tool chain, except Gulp was really, really simple in comparison to this other one we're going to be using. But we don't really need to know how to use this other one. There's a bunch of magic, and we just have to accept it because it's extremely complicated. Okay, but in reality, we may not need a tool chain because at the end of the day, React is just JavaScript. Okay, it's just that the organization of things works better with a tool chain. So the tool chain that we're going to be using, okay, the React team primarily recommends these solutions if you're learning React, which we are, or creating a new single page app, which we are. We're going to use something called Create React App. Okay, and again, you can be following along, or you can just be watching. Okay, at this point. So we're going to go to Create React App. Create React App has their own website. Okay, I have a link to all these things in the reading. Okay, Create React App, and there's a little get started thing. It's pretty straightforward. It says npx Create React App, my app. Okay, so this is how we create a new React application using the toolchain on our system. Remember, not a fundamentally necessary step for using React, but for our purposes, it is, because this is how I'm approaching it. Okay, so if you talk to someone in the biz of software development, this may not be how they use it, and that's okay. And when you get a job doing React, this may not be how you use it either, but that's okay. Okay, we're still writing in React. This is just a tool to help us. So it looks like this. We type in npx. npx is a new command, okay? It allows us to run node package executables. So little node package scripts without having to download them. In courses before, we used to have to download npm install Create React App globally -G. And then we can use it to create new React apps. But since npx came out, which is only about a year ago, we can actually do npx Create React App and use that script to create a new React app. And this script doesn't even live on our computer. It essentially downloads the script really fast, runs it to create a new React app, and then throws the script away. That's npx. Okay, so the way it goes is npx create React app, and then we put in the name of our app. Okay, this will create a new folder in our current folder. So if wherever you want to put these applications, that's where you're going to want to go to right now. Okay, so go to the folder if you want to start a new folder, maybe make dear SD260 or wherever you like. Okay, then we'll go into SD260. Okay, and I'm going to run the command. I am going to encourage you to as well. npx create -react -app, and we can call this first one sample app. Okay, and we just hit enter, and it will go for about 2-3 minutes and do a bunch of stuff. So I would encourage you to do the same. This is, yeah.
How do you get the load data to display in your bash or your console?
Are you using git bash?
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's the bug. It doesn't.
Okay.
I can't. Oh, projects cannot contain sample letters. Okay, capital letters. So it has to be underscore. Yeah. So that is a bug with git bash, unfortunately. So you have no idea how it's doing.
Yeah.
This is a different program that I'm using. So I can show you guys this program sometime, but it's a whole other ball game. Really, it's not just like a 2-minute thing. It'd be like I would probably do this over a lunchtime kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is
so we're just gonna, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. What is an NPX, not NPM?
Nope, node package. So NPX, what does it stand for? NPX is execute node npm package binaries. So it will check to see if the command exists on your computer. If it doesn't, it will install it and use it. That's what it says.
Thanks, I'll look at it.
Yeah. Again, we're going to be dealing with a lot of magic here. Okay. So you're going to have to just accept that, everyone. Like, there is going to be some things here, not just here, like in the rest of your life in this industry. There's going to be just a lot of magic that you're just going to have to accept. The difference between a junior and a senior developer is the senior developer understands a lot more of that magic, right, than the junior does, because that is what accumulates over time, is that in-depth knowledge of how things actually work. So as you can see, this takes a long time. Okay, there's a lot of stuff to install. These, excuse me, these are not small projects. React in general is not large, but using a tool chain like Create React App brings a ton of stuff to the party. Unfortunately, we don't need a lot of stuff, but it's the easiest way to get going. So I think these directories end up being about 500 megs each after they're done. We'll find out right away. And we're going to have to do this every time we create a new React app. One of the things you can do that I might recommend you do is that you use this as a template and you copy this entire directory. So we have this application, okay, kind of ready, sample app. We haven't done anything to it yet. I might say copy the whole thing and to like a template. So what this is doing, CP-R sample app template. This is taking this entire sample app and everything in it and creating a new copy of it and everything in it into a new directory called template. So it's like I'm taking a snapshot right now. Okay, and the reason why I would do that is because you saw how long it took to install all this stuff. Look how long it's taking to copy. I do not have a slow computer and it's taking this long to copy all this stuff because there's so many teeny tiny little files. That's essentially what kills this. It's not big files, it's many small files. It's easy to copy one large file. It's a lot more work to copy many tiny files. So this is going to work. And again, I think this is quicker than installing. There we go, a minute. So installing it fresh was 3 minutes, copying it was 1:09. Now we can take a look at the size of these applications, du-hr recursive sample. And I don't want verbose. No, there was a command I used before. History. du-hs sample app. So this will tell me the size. 187 megs. So a fresh install of Create React App is 187 megs. Okay. And we're going to be doing at least 10 on our computer, and they're going to be growing. So just to give you an idea, they're pretty big. Okay. So Create React App created a full-blown application for us here, okay? Which we're going to go to, sample app. So let's head over to sample app or whatever you called your app, and let's do a little bit of exploring and talking. So all this stuff is extremely important, okay? All this stuff is extremely important. Hey, wow, let's try to get some people here. Okay, so let's pop that open in code, VS Code. So just do code dot, okay, go into your app and do code dot, and we'll be able to click through and explore these things a little bit. And I'll talk about what it creates for us and what everything is, what we care about, what we don't care about. Okay. So on the left-hand side here, it should bring up like an explorer or a directory structure with files and stuff, right?
Yeah. Sir, I got some problem with downloading this. Like it tells me like some type arrow, like cannot read property loaded of undefined.
We are going to have to troubleshoot that after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So if you had any problems installing this stuff, then fine. We'll deal with that after. For now, just follow along. Okay. So on the left-hand side here, we have a variety of folders and files that Create React App builds for us. Okay, installs for us. So we have stuff that looks familiar. We have a package.json, right? Now, the package.json we did not create. It was created for us. It contains a bunch of dependencies. It creates a bunch of things called scripts, which we're going to use right away. Okay, it's got a bunch of other stuff which you don't really need to worry about. Okay, this is the stuff that you might care about, and we'll take a closer look at that shortly. Okay, it has a README. on some of the scripts that are available and some of the information that's available. So you can go in here and look at it. It says, hey, if you want to learn more how to do this, go over here to this Create React App documentation. Here's React documentation, how to split up stuff, right? Tutorials and stuff. Information for you in case you're interested. Don't worry too much about this README. Patch.lock.json, we're familiar with that a little bit. It shows up every time we install node modules, right? Don't worry about what it is. Git ignore, we do know what that is, right? It helpfully created a git ignore for us and says, ignore all this stuff. Okay. And says ignore all this stuff for us. So it's being helpful, even though this is not a Git repository at this moment. There is still a git ignore file, but there is no .git directory. It's just saying, I created this for you. Here it is. Here's a bunch of stuff you're probably going to want to ignore if you did make a Git repository out of this. Okay. I've created the git ignore file for you. It's essentially just a bunch of stuff. Sorry. Do you have a question?
But it doesn't have a .git. Doesn't it mean, and it created a master branch like right away. Doesn't it mean it made a Git repository?
Oh yeah, it did, huh? Look at that. Oh yeah, okay, so I guess it did create a Git repository. There you go. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I didn't see it here, so it's interesting that that's hidden, but git ignore isn't. So yeah, so it did create a Git repository for us. Now, it just created it locally, right? Git init, that's all it did. So even that, this is what Create React App does. Do you need a Git repository for this? No. Do you need a README? No. Do you need a lot of the stuff that it provides? No. But again, this is what we're going to be using for the setup in school, okay, for this. A lot of people do use this. And then we have this node modules folder, which we're very familiar with. This is where all of our node modules are installed. And this is one of the reasons why this application has such a big footprint, is because there are so many node modules installed, okay? If I'm just scrolling through them, okay, and you can take a look at how many there are so many. I'm only at I here, so I'm just gonna close that. Then we have two directories, SRC and public, okay? We're not really going to be working in public too much. We're going to be mainly working in SRC. Okay, so inside SRC, there's a lot of stuff that we don't need. And we're going to look at each one of these. Okay, inside public there's a lot of stuff we do need. Okay, so let's go through this piece by piece. So let's start here. Let's start in the public directory. Okay, this is, again, I need to highlight how important this is. If you don't have a really good grasp of the structure. So talking about structure, this is where that structure comes into play. Okay. Obviously, we're familiar with favicons, right? So we have a favicon. And we have our index.html. Okay, our normal index.html. It needs to go somewhere. Again, I reiterate, this is the structure that Create React App has set up. This is not necessarily the structure of every React app. But we do need some HTML somewhere. Okay, we need some HTML somewhere. Now, this HTML is special. It has some weird stuff in it. Okay, and again, this will all be managed by Create React App. It will be modified later. There's these little percentage public URL things. Okay, Create React App uses something called Webpack. Okay, I'm just going to pop over here. Webpack. Webpack, again, you don't need to know how to use it. Webpack is kind of like Gulp, except crazy on steroids Gulp. Way more complicated, but way stronger. Okay, so it is going to do special things with these percentages. Okay, that's in our index.html. Our index.html is in public. Pretty much the stuff that goes in public are going to be images and HTML files. And like, there's a couple other things. Favicon, we need that favicon if we want to have a favicon. These are a couple images, right? We also need, and robots.txt, we never talked about robots.txt, but pretty commonplace for them to be is in the public directory. Usually our images, they can go inside public, inside a new folder called images, right? This is what we're used to. They can go in there if you want them to, but we're not going to do that right now. We're just going to deal with the default standard that gets created for us. This manifest.json file, we don't need it. I recommend you just delete it. So click on it and delete manifest.json. Okay, and you could do that every single time. Over here, so that's the public directory. So we do need this index.html. That is our main entry point. Okay, that is our index.html. That's our HTML file, right? We need to put our stuff somewhere. Our JavaScript needs to be placed in an HTML file so it can be read by a browser, right? This is that HTML file. We'll come back and we'll look at it shortly. Over here under source or SRC, this is most of the files that we'll be working in. And honestly, we don't need a lot of these either. We're going to get rid of setup.tests.js. You can delete that file. Every single time you can delete it. Service worker.js. You can delete that file. We never used service workers. We won't need them. And app test.js, you can also delete. Okay. Everything else we're going to look at. All right, so let's take a look at this index.html file here. And let's look at what exists on here. And I'm just going to delete these comments so we can get a better sense of what's on this page. What do you see on this page? What does it look like exists on this page? Pretty much a bunch of HTML head stuff, right? Some links to, it says a manifest file. You actually don't need that because we deleted that file. But it has a link to a favicon, a link to a logo, this logo here. These are the Apple logos. Okay, so they show up when you install it on your device. A weird tag here, and then a div ID. It doesn't even have a CSS link. It doesn't even have a JavaScript link. Again, this is all Create React App magic. This is not how all React gets written. But the important part that we're looking at here is all it contains is one empty div. Okay. And this is what we're going to be working with our entire course. Just this empty HTML. Okay. The concept, a lot of the concept of React has evolved around this idea of something called SPAs. Does anyone know what an SPA stands for? Not SPA, although that does come up. SPA, if you type in SPA JavaScript, stands for single page application. A single page application in JavaScript, okay, and we can actually see this happen with GitHub, okay, is pretty much an application that never reloads the index HTML file. So we have, back in the day, right, back at the beginning, we created a Pied Piper website. It had multiple HTML files, right? When we clicked on a link, it went to another HTML file. That HTML file loaded up in the browser. It loaded its own JavaScript. It loaded its own CSS. It loaded its own images, boom, right? That is a standard way of creating websites, multiple HTML files. When you go to your backend, you're going to be doing that. You click on a link, it loads up a new HTML file, new stuff gets loaded into the browser, all that old HTML, all that old JavaScript, it's gone, forgotten about. The idea behind a single page application is we are never loading a new HTML file. Instead, what we're doing is when we click around on the screen, it triggers JavaScript events and causes JavaScript to delete a bunch of HTML DOM, like a bunch of DOM stuff, a bunch of elements, and insert a bunch of new elements to the point that it looks like a brand new page, but it's actually not. So when I click on this, okay, so it's actually here. Here's the start of the single page app for GitHub. Okay, I'm going to click on a piece of code here. This is our Pied Piper exercise. Okay, I'm going to click on this HTML file, and you will see this URL change. You will see this entire website change, but this is actually still the same page that I'm on. The only thing that didn't change was this header, right? Maybe some of this stuff at the top, but all of this stuff changed. And I can prove that to you by showing you the network tab, and we can look at documents that have gotten loaded. Okay, so we're going to go back here. Going to go back to this assignment. We're going to see the document. The document that gets loaded, the document, that's the HTML document that gets loaded. Okay, so every time you visit a web page, every time you visit a new web page, there should be at least one. I am just filtering it by doc. So there should only be one document that gets loaded when you visit a web page, and that's the HTML file. Okay, now watch what happens when I go to one of that page. It should reload a new doc, except it doesn't. This did not change. This didn't change at all. It is still the same doc that I loaded from before. Everything else inside changed. So what happened was JavaScript, what these are links that have event listeners attached to them. And when you click on it, it deletes everything inside of here and replaces it all with JavaScript. Okay, so this header actually never disappears. You see? Why would we do something like that? Can anyone give me an idea? Can anyone speculate why I would build an app that never loads another HTML page, and everything is operating off one HTML page just with JavaScript? And again, all of these things, same thing. Okay? All of these pages, same thing. Single page application.
Store users' data?
The concept behind this is that it's faster. Okay? It's faster to just delete some stuff in the current HTML that's been loaded and replace it with new stuff, then make a request. So what happened here is we didn't have to make a request back to the server necessarily. Even if we did, it's less work to send a request to the server, get some JSON back, like an API that we just did, use that data and just update the current UI instead of destroying everything, going to get another HTML file and then reloading everything. Okay, it's less work to do it this way. It's more work for us, but less work for the browser. Okay, and it gives us some pretty interesting experiences. So this concept, and you can see that little blue bar come across here that's showing you it's loading. That's one of the identifiers of a single page app. Okay. Now, some applications are built entirely as single page apps. There is literally just one file, one index.html, and a bunch of JavaScript. And that's pretty much what we're going to be doing just for this, but that is not necessarily how it has to be done. But this is a very common practice, right? So we are going to be literally working with almost an empty HTML file and building everything in JavaScript, everything. All of our HTML is going to be in our JavaScript. Okay. I'm going to pause here and offer any questions. Ask if any of you have any questions. We're going down a crazy, weird, different path. So this is very different, I would expect. And if you don't even know what to ask right now, that's fine. All right. So we're going to be creating what we call SPAs, or single page applications. Single page referring to the fact that there is only one index.html page, or only, sorry, not, doesn't have to be indexed, only one HTML page. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Again, you got to get a microphone. Questions need to be asked in here, not in chat. I am not looking at chat anymore. Okay, so going back here, index.html. Okay, this is our one entry point. So we need that. Okay, so pay close attention to this one div. This one div with the ID root, this is going to be where we inject all of our code into this one div, which is why we have a starting div with an ID. No other divs, okay? Nothing else, one div. Now, again, this is just how it's done in Create React App, but this is a good, very good concept. Okay, so let's head over to source, and this is where all the magic happens. Okay. Let's start with index.js, our main entry point into React. And we're going to, once you open it, you'll notice there's something at the bottom, service worker unregister. If you remember from 7 minutes ago, we deleted our service worker. We don't need this. How do you know that? How would you know that if John wasn't here? You don't, but John is here and John's telling you you don't need it. And then this line gets grayed out. You don't need this either because we, again, deleted service worker. All right. Now, this chunk of code here, okay, so let's dissect this all, okay? And actually, I'm going to take a step back here and even take this stuff out a little bit more so we can get a better sense of what's going on. I'll put that back and I'll tell you what that's for shortly. Okay. So let's start at the top, line 1. Remember in Gulp how we were doing that thing? It looks like this, require Gulp equals, oh wait, no, it was like this. Const Gulp equals require Gulp, right? Or something like that. Do you remember that? And I had explained to you that this is how we are able to connect multiple JavaScript files together, right? Outside of the HTML, right? Using HTML, we can just load JavaScript files in whatever order we want, and then we can use stuff from previous JavaScript files. So that kind of allowed us to use multiple files together. But we don't do that here. We use imports. And what this is essentially saying, go get the code from the React module, because we need to use some of the objects and some of the things from React. Go get the code from the React DOM module and put it inside the variable React DOM. I'm going to create that for you. Okay, go get the code from the React module and put it inside the variable React. Okay, so we have access to a variable in here called React that was created by going to get the stuff from the React module. We also have a variable in here called React DOM. Okay, so you can actually see that here. These are objects for the most part. Again, going back, we don't necessarily know what they're going to be. They could be objects, they could be arrays, they could be a variety of things, functions, but they're usually objects. Okay, so this is a different type of thing than require, but it's very similar. Okay, it's a newer modern version of require. So we don't require here, we import. You'll also notice a couple other weird things. Import CSS and import app. Okay, so we're going to talk about this import CSS. One of the really interesting things about React and how we construct it is we break down everything into really small pieces, including CSS. So the days of having one CSS file, gone. The days of having one giant HTML, one giant JavaScript, gone. We are going to be breaking things down into what we call components. We're going to talk about components a lot more in the future upcoming days. So don't worry too much about it now, but you will see that we are going to start having many CSS files and many little JavaScript files, each representing a little different item, user interface element on the screen. Okay. So we have a CSS file, which we need, right? Because we need to have it styled. So essentially we're including everything we need to run at the entry point of our application. And then we have app here. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about this right away. Then we have this key line of code. React DOM, render, app, document.getElementById root. This should look familiar to you. Document.getElementById root. It goes into the document, gets the element by ID. What essentially is happening here is we are essentially rendering a bunch of HTML into, or not HTML, React or JavaScript or whatever, into this element. We are pushing, so we're rendering JavaScript into this element. This looks like HTML, but trust me, it's not. We are in a different, very different weird land. Okay, this is JavaScript. And we're rendering into this. This is our key. This one line is our key to getting React started. Okay. I'm going to save this. I'm going to run this. And we're going to take a look at, how this looks in the browser. Okay. So to run a React application using Create React App, it is this. npm start. And this will run our application. and it keeps it running. Kind of like NPM, kind of like gulp, when we typed in gulp and it would stay running and watch for file changes. That's exactly what's happening here. See, it's running, I'm not doing anything. It opened up my browser, it opened it up to localhost. This is saying starting the development server. It's going to start a development server. It's going to slow down your computer a lot. I can actually see the lag that it's creating in Zoom right now. Yeah, and I can, my fan is going crazy on my computer. Wow. Usually doesn't take this long. There we go. Okay, so finally, it showed up. Inside of our server, it will continue to load up our files automatically as we change them. So whenever we go and we change our files, hey, can I save? I go back to my browser, it's already updated. Okay, so nothing really impressive is happening here. Here's the main piece of information that's happening. It is using React DOM from up here and inserting into this document.getElementID, this element, the root element, right? This root element, it's inserting this piece of JavaScript. I keep referring to this as JavaScript, and you're still probably thinking this is HTML, but it's not. It's JavaScript. And it prints it out like that. Hey, not impressive, right? Okay. This is, and then we started our server using, I'm going to kill this. To kill this, how do I kill this? How do you think I kill this? This server is sitting here running. I type in stuff, nothing happens because the server's running. How do I stop my server?
Control C.
Control C, correct. Okay, so I killed my server. I can start my server again. I start my server with npm start. And it will take a while. If you're on a Mac or you're using Git Bash, it should not take this long, but, or perhaps it might be something that happens the first time you start it. And there you go. Okay, so that is kind of our process. Now, any questions about that so far? There's a ton more stuff I need to talk about, but any questions so far?
The line 4, it says import app from something app. Why doesn't it say app.js? Because this is the same JS.
You can say app.js because it's actually, so this line 4, good question. So this line 4 and this line 3 are different than this line 2 and line 1. So line 2 and line 1, these are coming from modules, node modules. And so they don't have this // in front of them. This / is suggesting that it's in the file system relative to the file that we're working on. Kind of like how we used to do our CSS and JavaScript in our HTML, right? It's relative to the in the HTML file. So that's what this is suggesting. Why doesn't it not have the JS? You can add it and it's fine, but apparently it doesn't need it if it's a JavaScript file. Yeah. So that's actually coming from, if you can see // that's suggesting there is a file in the same folder as index.js, app.js, right? That exists. So app.js and index.js are in the same folder. This is pulling code in from there. And it is also pulling code in from index.css.
I was only wondering how it would distinguish app.css from app.js.
Yeah, I think by default it looks for JS, and that's why all other file types require the file extension. Okay, Any other questions?
And John, we have not used the way we have been doing like in HTML file, like a script and adding that index.js. We have not added that index.js there, but still.
No. And so this is a lot of the magic that happens with Create React App, right? Inside the index.html, we haven't added any JavaScript files. Inside here, we are not really referencing our index.html. We only go and get that one element. And that's pretty consistent with how we're going to be building it this time. And that is simply because of the magic of Create React App. Okay, this is not how it needs to work, but this is part of the magic. I think what we're going to do maybe at the end of the week is I'll show you a different way of doing it. Again, this Create React App adds a lot of magic and a lot of overhead, but it also gives us a lot of structure that we like. Okay, so it's bad and it's good at the same time. So we're going to keep using it. Daniel, the answer to your question, can we just inject HTML? So we will be building these little pieces. All of our HTML is going to be now inside our JavaScript, embedded in our JavaScript. Love it or hate it. Some people look at this and say, that's disgusting. So no more of our HTML will be in our HTML. All of our HTML will be now in our JavaScript. And again, some people look at that and say, that's disgusting. That should not exist. It should not be like that. That's not right. But this is how the world works now. Okay. So I said before, this is not HTML. Anyways, aside from the fact that I just said all of our HTML will be in our JavaScript, this is not HTML. This is called JSX. JSX. Okay, it is a special type of language, I guess. JavaScript. I don't even know what the X stands for, extensible markup. That was created. It was created by the React project for specifically React. Okay, so it is a different type of language. It is not JavaScript, but it is not HTML. It's kind of like this hybrid of JavaScript and HTML. Okay, so there's a couple of really interesting things about this. One, I did not wrap this in quotes, right? That's pretty crazy. Anytime I'm used to putting HTML out on the page, I usually have to wrap it in quotes in my JavaScript. Am I right? That's what our experience is so far. When I wrap this in quotes and I save it, and then I go back to my browser, it's going to say, it's going to show me HTML. So instead, we don't wrap it in quotes, because as soon as it encounters what looks like an HTML tag, React or Create React App is smart enough to flip into JSX and say, oh, okay, now I'm rendering HTML. So here, JSX can be written very much like HTML, except without quotes. We can put attributes on it, like ID. Okay. We can interpolate things just like we can in strings. Remember, when we were doing strings and we wanted to interpolate, which means this, let's put a data attribute on here. And we wanted to interpolate something, we would do $, and now we're in JavaScript, right? And we can do 2 + 2. Okay, so if I save this, we end up with a string with some interpolation. 2 + 2 = 4. Great, but we're still printing out the HTML itself. Let's take these off, because in JSX we don't use those. And in JSX, we don't use this type of we don't use this $ for interpolation. Instead, we interpolate like this directly. Anytime we put braces like this, we are going into JavaScript. JSX automatically knows that. Okay. So now we come back over here, save this file, come back over here, it'll automatically reload. Again, we get this. If we inspect it, we will see it has a data attribute 4. Now you'll see I didn't put quotes around this because JSX is built to know how to interpolate this. So we don't put quotes when we're interpolating things that's getting inserted into our JS as attribute values, into our HTML as attribute values. We do not put quotes around them. A mistake that you'll probably make at some point. Okay, because if I put quotes around it, now we've got a problem. Now it's not being interpolated anymore. Now our data ATR number is 2 plus 2. See? We don't want 2 plus 2, we want 4. So we have to take those quotes off. And there's a couple of other little weird oddities here. And one of them is the word class is not supported. This is not supported in JSX. I'm gonna come over here. Oh, okay, that's not what I was expecting. It should be class name. Class name. Okay, so you should be using, I don't know why class worked. Usually it gives you, oh, it's because I'm not using strict mode. Okay, it gives you errors. So this is JSX. It looks a lot like JavaScript. Sorry, it looks a lot like HTML, but it's not, it's JavaScript. And what's actually happening here, you familiar with Babel, right? We used Gulp Babel. It converted our ES6 into ES5 and our ES7 to ES5. Babel also converts React, JSX, into JavaScript. So actually, if we looked at what this looks like in sources, it's actually using Babel. You can see they use strict, bundle, main chunk. Not very pretty. We can actually take this over. Let's take this over to the Babel website. And we can actually, they have a little try it out thing. We can put some JavaScript over here, some JSX. We can tell it what it is. It's React, okay? And you can see, so it looks like, let me zoom in here. It looks like JavaScript. It looks like JavaScript on the left-hand side, but it actually outputs as, it looks like HTML, but it actually generates JavaScript. This is how JSX works. This is how React works. But it generates this. React.createElement, an h1 tag. Here are the attributes. Here's the content. And you can also write it like this if you wanted to, but this is a lot more work.
So it's kind of like the React module take the HTML that without quotes as a and make it into real HTML and inject them into the page, right?
Kinda, yeah. I don't exactly know how it works under the hood, but kinda, yeah. The reason why they do this is because it's more developer friendly. We all know HTML already, and it's way easier to write one of these than it is to write something like this, especially when you have a lot of nested elements. We can nest stuff in here too. right? We can put this inside a div. And this is legit. This is totally fine. Okay. If we go back to our page, everything's happy. Okay. And now it's inside a div. So div root inside our div. There we go. So it's just, it looks and feels a lot like HTML, except there's a couple little weird nuances here, class name and a couple other things that we're going to come across over time. Okay. And this weird interpolation and no double quotes. Double quotes are used to define, like, so that's the weird part. Okay. Now let me like undo all of this here. Okay. So we're back over here. Back to where we started. So this doesn't look like what we just did. This looks different. React strict mode. So remember when I said, oh, you have to use class name? Right? React strict mode is turning on all the limitations that you're supposed to be following. When I said you're supposed to use class name instead of class, I didn't have it within React strict mode, so it just totally was cool with it. But with React strict mode on, if you go to your browser, it still prints it out. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Maybe I'm on drugs. Or maybe they changed that.
I read the same thing too, John.
That is supposed to be using class name?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's an update.
Yeah, maybe it's an update, or maybe it's a warning, like, oh, hey, actually, let me go to class and see. Did we get a new warning? Yeah. Invalid DOM property class. Did you mean class name? Okay, so this is a special, because it's in strict mode. So it's still going to work, but they're saying, that's not right. Okay, so it's supposed to be class name. Okay. All right. Now, let's pop over to where we were when we started. Look like this. Okay. Actually, this is a good spot for a break. Let me ask, are there any questions right now? Before we keep going? We still have a good chunk of stuff to go over. Let's see. What is it? Why do we use it? Is it necessary? Look at the structure and the necessities. Create our first React app. Talking about imports. We're going to do a new render. We're going to build an app, break down an app. Talking about JSX. Okay.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Can we put the node models file into our home directory? I tried that, it still works.
Can you put your node modules folder into your home directory?
Yep.
Into your public? Like,
no, like computer home directory.
Yes, but I would not. That's a bad habit. The idea behind node modules is that they are not shared, that every single application has its own set of dependencies. That's the idea behind node modules. Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you have another application on your computer that needs a different version of one of the modules, it might need to install a different version of one of these modules, which means this other application that used the older version might break. So the idea is that every application has its own set of node modules, its own dependencies, its own versions of each module, and that's what we want. Otherwise, we're going to get a crazy amount of conflicts as we start doing more development. So you don't really want to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a break here. Come back at 25 after. and we'll finish up talking about our introduction to React. Okay. See you in a bit.